Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our third Business Support Live session. This is an extension really of our Business Support Forum online, where we're trying to field as many of your questions as we possibly can about business matters, regulation, insurance, accounting, legal things, anything we can do to try and help with those questions you've got at the moment. Today, we're going to be focusing in a bit more specifically on travel insurance, because that's something that I think a lot of consumers and travel companies have had questions about. So really pleased to be joined by Howard Dove, who is the Managing Director on the insurance side at Holiday Extras. Morning, Howard.
Morning all.
We're also joined by Matt Purser, a Director of the Travel Trade Consultancy, which helps its clients on everything from insurance and bonding to finance and legal. And also Gemma Antrobus, who is the boss of Haslemere Travel in Surrey, and she is also the chair of ATO Agents. So as well as the insurance side, we'll be talking through some of the other hot topics and key questions that you've had this week. If we can focus on the insurance side first, Howard, it'd be really helpful if you could just talk us through a little bit how travel insurance providers have experienced the crisis so far, you know, from when it first began to emerge as an issue to where we are now.
Yeah, when the sort of first news came out, we had been working with our underwriter TIFF on a sort of add-on to our policy for sort of travel disruption, which includes things like pandemics such as the coronavirus, and we were planning to introduce that in our scheme renewal in April. But some other providers already have an add-on to their policy to cover things like pandemics and epidemics, and very, very few travel insurance policies cover it as standard. And I think that what happened first of all was that customers went crazy buying travel insurance. So immediately the thing started to kind of gain momentum. Customers from all channels through our travel agents online, through the aggregators, through all the various people we speak to in the industry, customers were buying travel insurance by the droves, but weren't aware of the fact that something like COVID wouldn't be covered, or whether it was covered or not. And I think that quite a lot of people had bought insurance or continue to buy insurance, assuming that they would be covered for cancellations for coronavirus, which in the majority of circumstances wasn't the case. And really then, travel insurance underwriters, people like TIFF and other underwriters, through their governance process and through guidance and discussions with the FCA and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, were really made to make the restrictions on policies very clear. So you'll see on lots of websites and for anyone who remains selling travel insurance, it will be very clear to say, any claims related to COVID will not be covered for cancellation, for medical, etc., etc. And that happened first of all, and then moving on from that, travel insurance underwriters sort of withdrew their supply. Their governance process said, we're not going to sell policies anymore. We almost feel at this point that it's, with there being a travel ban for the foreseeable future, it isn't a product we feel comfortable selling. So there remains a handful of companies selling travel insurance, but most of them have a restriction where you can't travel until, say, July. And with the sort of FCO advice on cruise passengers over 70s, not being allowed to book a cruise, it's a sort of complex position, and we made the difficult decision not to continue selling travel insurance policies while the ban is in place. We're sitting in the background, and at the moment we're saying, we're hoping to be back on sale for the 1st of July. And we have a small team working through amends and cancellations. And I know one of the questions that people are asking is, can they amend? And our underwriter and us have absolutely said, yes, if you've got an existing policy and your tour operator, travel agent is suggesting that you can move your holiday into the same time next year, we will amend your policy. There might be an additional fee, because obviously if you've got another year's worth of cancellation, there'll be an extra charge on that, but the money you've already paid will go in full towards that. So, and the insurer, our insurer allowing us to have a much longer lag, so you can book something for next summer if you can, and your insurance will cover you for that. So I think that's a good thing that insurers are doing.
So at the moment, I wouldn't be able to buy holiday extras, travel insurance for a trip in 2021 even. You're just not selling it at all?
No, we're not. I mean, there are clearly a handful of customers who are still buying holidays for the future, but I think they are a small handful. And I think the majority, the feeling I get is that they're people amending existing holidays into the future. And if that's the case and they've already got insurance, then they can amend the insurance policy to match. And for me, I think we need to get more clarity on people being allowed to travel before we should be selling that policy. And also working with the underwriter on, how do the policies of the future look? Do you amend your policy so you can cover pandemics? What does that do to the pricing and the risk? And at the moment, I think the underwriters are really unclear what the risk is. So they're very nervous of writing it and not being able to cover it adequately with the premiums they charge.
Yeah. And would the majority of your customers take year-round cover, or is a lot of it that sort of single trip policy?
Yeah, the majority of our customers will buy single trip. It's probably 80% of our customers buy single trip. And particularly through our travel agent network, that tends to be the case. Our single trip policies have no age cap, so they're particularly suitable for older clients. Whereas the annual policies tend to have a sort of lower age cap, whereas on our single trip you can be any age and get cover. And that often works out, it often works out cheaper if you're going twice to get a single trip than it does an annual in many circumstances.
Gemma, what sort of experience have you had with your clients in the last few weeks? Are they asking questions about travel insurance, and have you been able to give them any advice?
A lot of our clients, where we're moving their trips to next year, are obviously talking to their travel insurance providers about shifting the dates over, and that's being obviously quite successful. And obviously, as was mentioned, sometimes there's a little bit extra to pay because obviously the policy is now much longer. Some of them are really struggling to get any monies back from their travel insurance companies, and I do wonder sometimes whether they are asking the right questions. And I think that's something that we should be helping our clients with, is that if it is a case where they do need to claim on their insurance policy, or they are trying to, I do think that we do have some kind of responsibility to help steer them with the right information, because if you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get the wrong answer. So we have had a couple of situations where our clients are elderly. Obviously, we can't get involved with the policy because it might be with their bank, but they're not asking the right questions. And by the time we know that, it's often too late because they've had a no to their sort of question. It's really difficult. It is a really difficult situation. And I'm currently dealing with a couple of clients with a scheme has been set up with TTNG. So as you know, we're members of TTA, and they are offering for members a service whereby you can provide the client's policy, type of policy, who it's taken out with, and obviously the period of cover, the holiday details, and their insurance broker will take a look at the policy and say whether they think they can make a claim. Now obviously they're not making the claim on behalf of the client, but what it's really helping to do is take the stress away from clients of dealing with something that they have no knowledge about, and is something that can be quite upsetting sometimes if you're old and you don't know the right things to ask, you're not getting the right answers, and it's something beyond your realm of understanding. So what it's doing is it's helping us to be able to guide clients in saying, yes, we do think your policy has a clause in it where you might be able to claim, or no, there isn't a clause, so there's no point even putting yourself under that stress. So, but it's really individual. It's like every single booking. It's like every single either refund or amendment. It's different for everyone. And that's just the stress of it all. There's no one policy fits all.
And we had a question in from Sean Fletcher at Travel Four Seasons in Hemel Hempstead. He was asking, what is the travel insurance position around package holidays where operators are refusing to refund? Is it right that insurers do not have to pay out? And maybe come back to you on this, Howard. If somebody has bought a package holiday and there is a provider that is responsible for that package holiday, a lot of insurers just won't pay out in that instance, will they, if there is somebody else that has a legal obligation to give a refund there?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the insurance is always based on the principle that there's a terms and conditions. There are things that the insurance policy covers for, and there are things that the insurance policy doesn't cover for. And the insurance always sits behind the tour operator, the flights, the travel agent. You know, that the responsibility there is for, you know, if the tour operator cancels a holiday, to either refund the customer or, in more recent circumstances, to issue a voucher or move the holiday. If that happens, then there isn't an insurance to be had. You know, the customer is, of course, you know, they're not getting the holiday now, but they're getting it later. In the circumstances where the tour operator cancels the holiday, but for whatever reason doesn't give a refund or a voucher, then, you know, that's the thing that they'd have, you know, the customer has to take up with the tour operator and travel agent. You know, it's really not an insurance matter in that circumstance. Whereas if the customer was, you know, cancelled building up to the holiday genuinely because of a reason that they couldn't travel, which was insured, then, you know, the insurer would be responsible for that. That's not the tour operator's part. But where it's, you know, caused by the pandemic and the tour operators are not able to operate the holiday, in the majority of circumstances, they're moving those holidays and issuing vouchers, and therefore there's nothing to refund the customer on.
So the kind of customers that might be due a refund from your point of view, Gemma, are they the ones which are perhaps cancelling but the holiday is still operating, so they haven't got that source of kind of refund from the operator? Or which kind of circumstances do you think that they might get that claim through on insurance?
There's been both situations. We've had a couple of situations with clients where they do have very I suppose, full coverage policies that do cover for pandemic, and where we've been working with tour operators to provide as much as possible back to the client, getting any recoverable monies back, holding monies in credit. But invariably there have been some instances where there are monies that just, you know, right now are not coming back, and some of our clients' policies have covered this. So by no means have we seen anybody getting massive, great insurance claims back, but where their insurance have been able to see that they have tried to recover everything that they possibly can. So perhaps it's like a three-part situation. There's an amount of money that's come back and been given to the client. There's an amount of money that's being held in credit for future use, but there's still an amount of money that's unrecoverable for whatever reason that might be. We have had clients who've been successful in claiming that smaller element to make up the full amount of the package. Now, again, that's going to be individual for each policyholder and each situation and each insurance provider. We've also got, you know, quite challenging situations with, you know, our clients being older, particularly our older clients that like to cruise, and with this sort of blanket, you know, advisory of if you're over 70, you don't get on a cruise ship, which is really difficult because while some cruise lines have been, you know, very forward thinking and have stopped schedules to perhaps the end of June, you know, that can't go on forever. But you have a lot of clients who now feel that they are in this bracket, and, you know, 70 is not particularly old, and it doesn't mean that you're infirm, but now have this situation of saying, well, I'm told I shouldn't really get on a cruise ship because I'm over 70. And of course, that's, you know, one of the biggest target markets for cruise. So, you know, the cruise lines are being very generous. They're offering, you know, large amounts of future cruise credit. They're using huge windows for booking, but of course this means the clients get even older by the time they get on the cruise ship, and sometimes they just think they just don't want to be in that situation. because they're worried, it being a floating petri dish, so to speak. And that's really hard. And again, individual circumstances. But, where tour operators are providing options, but clients don't want to take them, it's difficult because they do feel that they are owed their money back from somebody, even when they can have it back, but not in the way that they feel that they should have it back. And it's all to do with choice, isn't it? Everybody's different.
Yeah. I mean, how do we feel that the travel insurance landscape is going to have to change as a result of this? I mean, Matt, have you any sense of how big a hit the insurance sector has taken? Or Howard as well, you would have some insight, I'm sure.
Well, I think for me, I think the interesting thing is obviously everyone wants to be last in the queue. So the travel insurers, the tour operator, the credit card companies, they all want to. They'll look at claims, but they all want to be last. They all want to make sure that you've explored all other avenues first. And I think obviously none of us have ever gone through this experience before, and so I think there's huge confusion over who should be first in the queue. The thing that's interesting for me is that you've got, as Howard said, a number of insurers now who are not selling policies, some who are selling policies and exclude pandemics or exclude COVID-19. Does that mean that they were included beforehand? I think no one actually knows the answer to that. And my gut feeling is if they're now excluding it, is that an admission of guilt that it was included before? And I think when you look at websites like the Association of British Insurers, it still talks about people may have claims and things like that. And I think it's frustrating for customers, but I think they have to go through that process of claiming that first of all. I mean, I've got experience of doing claims when I was at CAA and at Atoll. And unfortunately, there are people out there who will try and claim from the tour operator, and they will try and claim from the travel insurer as well. And so for me, it feels like they have to go through that process of claiming through the insurance. I think if you're a tour operator, you probably want confirmation that that claim has been refused, so that if you are giving them a refund credit note, or you are giving them a cash refund, that you are the only one that's giving them that amount back to them. They're not claiming twice.
Yeah. And this is surely going to make the travel sector a less attractive one for the insurance underwriters. Howard, do you think? Are we looking at insurance policies having to increase in price if underwriters pull out of travel and so on?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've been trying to think around how it might impact travel insurance moving forward. I think there's a number of factors that might influence what happens. The FCA, who sort of oversee the regulation of insurance, and potentially entities like the FCO and so forth, may work together on what travel insurance should cover. There may be some sort of government involvement in how travel insurance looks and what it is acceptable for it to cover and not cover. So there may be some external pressures in there on underwriters and travel insurers to change their policies. There'll certainly be calls for insurers to make it very, very clear what is and isn't covered. I think there'll be a change of how policies are laid out. The information that customers get will be reviewed, and how customers are informed of restrictions on their policy. I think that from a travel agent point of view, it will just become more and more important to be very clear with customers what is and isn't covered, and so that customers are, their expectations are managed. I think one of the things that hasn't happened in the past is that customers are a little bit blasé about travel insurance cover. I think that they, quite a large percentage of customers will go online to the aggregators and buy, a policy for a handful of pounds to go to Spain, and not realise that the reason it's very cheap is because it doesn't really cover them for very much. Whereas the policies that the majority of travel agents sell it through us or through others are much more comprehensive, robust products, more suitable for, you know, for covering customers' needs. And what's happened with the aggregators is that there's just become a sort of race to the bottom on price, and what that means is you just rip out cover and rip out cover. And I think and I hope that it will mean that customers will be prepared to pay more for their travel insurance. A higher percentage of them will buy it at the point they buy the holiday in the travel agent or through the tour operator, because, you know, the travel agent and the tour operator should and will be selling a policy that's suitable for covering their holidays, so the customer knows they're safe. It's all bought in one place rather than buy the holiday here and then go and get your cover somewhere else. So I'm hoping that enhanced awareness of the need for travel insurance should increase people buying it, and what insurance covers will make customers be prepared to pay more to get more cover. I think that the landscape will change, and I think that's for the best. You know, we want to sell travel insurance to give customers the cover they need. We don't want to sell travel insurance to make money. That is a secondary byproduct of running a business. You know, the FCA have a real ethos on treating the customer fairly, and that is behind every regulation. And therefore, our focus should always be on the customer and what the customer expects, and making sure the customer knows what they're buying.
Pippa, can I just add to that? I think Howard's completely right, and I think you see it with when there's a tour operator failure. Suddenly, there's a huge increase of people then booking through bonded travel companies again, because people suddenly go, "Oh, I don't want to get burnt like that again. I don't want to do my own packaging." And I think the same will happen with insurance. I think people will be probably a lot clearer and investigate a lot more about what they're actually buying. And I think we saw it a bit sort of 10 years ago with the Icelandic ash cloud, where suddenly that was probably something not specified within an insurance policy. People start to check it, but of course then people start to get more blasé again and have short memories, really.
Yeah. The other linked but sort of slightly different side of the insurance question, perhaps one for you, Matt, is for travel agents and tour operators getting their own insurance as businesses. Do we think there's likely to be change there as well? It'll be, you know, premiums are going to go up in terms of your liability insurance and those different things.
Yes, I think that there was some policies that are available already in terms of disruption. Either business disruption or actually disruption to the destination that you were sending people to. I think there's been real mixed success on people managing to claim on those as well. So I think it goes across the board, really, that there just needs to be more clarity around it. No one foresaw this coming, so that's the problem. But hopefully the policies going forward will make it clear what you are and what you're not covered for, to make the claims process simpler. But of course that tends to come at a cost. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to some of the other challenges and questions that we've had this week, we had a question in from Andrew Devine, who's director at Beaver Travel Agency. He asked us this week, where do agents stand regarding refunding clients in full when the travel agent has incurred a credit card fee to take that booking? So he mentioned sort of £900 worth of credit card fees on a £44,000 booking, and that was with Amex specifically. Any thoughts on that, Matt, Gemma? I mean, is this something you've experienced yourself, Gemma, that if you are giving a client a refund, you're not getting that credit card fee that you've had to pay back?
We made a decision when the new directive came in, where travel agents or any retailers had to pay for credit card fees. We worked with it for about 4 or 5 months just to look at the impact on the business. Looked at it and saw that it was impossible to continue with that level of credit card charges being taken as a complete knock, when we're all making such small margins anyway. So over a year ago, so about 18 months ago, we made a decision to only take credit cards to the value of £2,000 on any one booking. So to minimise that risk, we stopped taking American Express payments, full stop. because they were the highest, and also they were the longest to hit our bank account. And it was met actually really well by clients. And I know we have it on the bottom of our emails. It's very self-explanatory from the moment that we start talking to clients, that you can pay up to £2,000 on your credit card for a booking, but above that, it has to be a bank transfer, debit card, cash, check, whatever. So our liability on credit cards is at the moment is a lot less than obviously Andrew's situation here. But yeah, it's something that, so we haven't really had to come across that too much because we don't have that in our business. But I do think that I know agents where merchant providers have started to get a bit twitchy. And I do think perhaps after this, we will all need to reassess how we take payments from clients, and what that looks like. For us, there's certainly no intention of going back to taking anything more than £2,000 on a booking. I know some agents that take credit cards on deposits only, again, to minimise their risk. I don't know what the answer is to Andrew, but it might be something that he will be looking at with his co-owners to say, okay, this is a horrible situation to be in. There's even more money that we're losing. What do we do in the future? And yeah, I don't know what the answer is.
I mean, I'd add to Gemma there that, yeah, I think it is a cost to the business, and yeah, unfortunately the customer has to get back exactly what they paid for it. So that is money that potentially they would lose out on. I think agents in this situation are probably in slightly better position than tour operators in terms of chargebacks. I think it enables them to fight them a bit more on the basis that you are not the provider of the service. So Consumer Credit Act 75 says you have to have paid the tour operator direct to be able to claim under that. They can still claim under a chargeback, but I think you have more chance of fighting it as an agent than you do a tour operator. I mean, there's also some guidance out from Visa and MasterCard. Visa goes a bit further than MasterCard, saying that if your booking is cancelled due to government advice, then you cannot make a chargeback. I don't think that is feeding all the way through to the actual merchant acquirers, and they're still actioning chargebacks through. So I think anyone receiving chargebacks should be fighting them, especially if it's a payment made by Visa.
Have you had chargebacks as well, Gemma, to contend with, and how have you handled those?
No, thankfully not, because the whole situation with not taking large credit card payments has meant that clients, for the small amount that would be on a booking, that's not the bit that they're worried about. It would be the large amount. We had a client talk about it, but when he realised that actually it wasn't, his whole booking hadn't been paid on his credit card. It was, his error in thinking he paid it like that, but he paid the balance by back. So he realised, we also explained to him that we are the intermediary, we are the middleman, his contract is not with us. And actually, it was a very knee-jerk reaction at the beginning when lots was unknown. And we've been able to work with the clients to, find the correct solution for them moving forward. And that's what it's our job to do, is to kind of put our clients' minds at rest, try and, keep them happy, do whatever we can to save that booking for the future, or work with them to find a solution that they're happy with, rather than, I can appreciate clients are, knee-jerk reaction is, I want my money back. But, when you talk to, clients that are spending a lot of money are often in business themselves. They understand what's going on. They understand the restraints that we have in pipeline monies. And when you talk to them like human beings, often they calm down and they will understand that nobody's trying to rip them off. You're just trying to do what's best for them. So, thankfully we haven't had chargeback situations, but I know agents that have. So it's, again, different for every client.
Yeah. Afraid we're another week along and still no news on package travel regulations being relaxed. So we're still in very similar limbo situation at the moment. How's that panning out for your clients at the moment, Matt? Is it creating huge challenges, I'm sure?
It is. I think the lack of clarity again is just hugely confusing for them, and that gets passed on to customers. I think, by the sounds of what Gemma's doing, she's speaking to her clients regularly and updating them, and I just think that's of paramount importance that everyone does this. But I think there is that huge confusion because ABTA is still pushing to try and get that changed. I think my understanding is that ministers are not quite getting it, and I think part of that may be weirdly, it's because there's been no failures, or and therefore they're going, what's the problem? But the longer this goes on, I think the bigger the problem becomes, and there just needs to be some clarity around that. By the sounds of it, again with Gemma, a lot of her clients are taking the refund credit notes or moving their bookings to next year. We've got clients who are taking bookings for next year as well. I think, there is the FCO advice out there. I don't think that really changes anything. When you look at what the airlines have actually cancelled, most are going up to the end of May now. They've cancelled. So I think they're the only ones that people have to really worry about for now, really. And we have to just adapt to it as things change.
Yeah, we still got that hugely uncertain FCO advice. It's indefinite at the moment. Gemma, are you kind of prioritising working on customers who are due to depart in May and June, or just May? How are you kind of trying to interpret this indefinitely advice?
To be honest, we've been doing, I'm even moving bookings for the end of the year to next year, and that's on client request. But we have prioritised up to the end of May, unless we know from the tour operator or the cruise line that particular trip is not going ahead. And then we're really just communicating with clients and telling them that unless they have heard from us that their trip is cancelled, then it's not. It is still planned. As we know today, your trip is still going ahead. If, however, you would like to make an amendment to it to travel next year, then absolutely talk to us about what you want to do. Now, of course, because this is their choice, there may be a cost implication to this. But when we're talking to them and we're making all of those things known up front, they're more than happy to look at what that might look like for them. And then it puts their mind at rest. And we're sort of saying to clients, we don't have a crystal ball, but generally speaking, if they're moving a May, June departure to anything after maybe September, October time, then we hope that those will travel. We are hearing from some of our suppliers that they hope that late July departures will go ahead. And where I'm finding the biggest challenge is where clients are just listening to the likes of some of our travel pundits, who I won't name, who are, using very, very inflammatory language when the indefinite word. And so they're ringing up saying, well, my trip in August won't be going ahead. I want my money back. And of course you're having to say to them, we don't know that. And they say to you, but we do know that, because we've been told indefinitely we're not going anywhere. And that's really difficult, because you have to explain to them that your flights are currently scheduled to depart. If you are not on those flights, you're still charged for them. And obviously with balances being due, it, creates a whole nother set of conversations with clients. But you just have to be really honest with them and say, I can only tell you factually what is going on now. Your booking is outside of these parameters. If you want to move it, you can. That is your choice. But you cannot have a refund back for a holiday in September or October. You can't have a full refund of your deposit just because you want it, because that holiday still is planned to go ahead. If you want to wait a bit longer and see if the advice changes, then that's a different situation. But if you're sitting here today, thumping on the desk and saying, I want my deposit money back because I don't want to pay you my balance, you're under normal standard terms and conditions with the supplier. And we've had some awkward conversations. And it is purely because they are just so bombarded with a huge amount of information that is, conflicting in all kind of ways. And people just saying, well, EasyJet, I booked EasyJet directly and I've got my money back. Well, that's because you were traveling in March. These clients' holidays isn't until October. And people don't find those similarities when they're having that conversation over the fence with their neighbour. They just hear what they want to hear. And then that becomes our problem to explain it to them. But, that's what we're here for. That's what we get paid for, or don't get paid for in this case.
Well, it's great to hear from Matt that some of his clients are getting some fresh forward bookings. Are you getting anything in much at the moment at Haslemere, Gemma? We've
had some inquiries, which is always really positive. But it's hard because we were, having a career in the travel industry as long as all of us have. you know, the way that we've always believed is you can't, your travel insurance will be invalid if you book when a country is on effective lockdown. And I think a lot of our clients believe the same thing, that they're happy, they want to go ahead with something, we've got quotations for them, they're happy with dates and prices, but just until we are through the other side of this, they don't want to spend out any money, and we get that. So we understand that these bookings will come. But the money that we're taking at the moment is purely for moving bookings to future dates where there are price increases on flights or that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily, you know, revenue for Haslemere Travel. It's, you know, the cost of the price hike in the flight or whatever.
Yeah. And from your point of view, Howard, do you think there's likely to be any more clarity on the travel insurance side before the FCO does lift that indefinitely advisory, or is it's going to take until that lifts for holiday extras to start selling insurance again?
I mean, we are sort of making a plan, as I think, as I mentioned earlier, that we will be back selling by the 1st of July. So trying to bring some of the team in June to get everything reset up and re-established, communicate out to our partners and agents again as to, you know, we've got a slightly different policy coming out because it would be due out in April anyway. So that's just been deferred to a bit later. Just briefing our agents on any changes that there are, and re-releasing that from the sort of 1st of July. And I think we just stick to that plan for the time being and see what happens. You know, clearly I'm trying to talk to the underwriter about, is there a sort of premium level of cover, our platinum policy, for instance, where we could make that, regardless of price, have cover for pandemics. You know, my chief exec, Matthew, was talking to me yesterday about, you know, people like Emirates are starting to test customers for COVID before they get on the flight. And clearly if they've got any positive customers, they won't be allowed to fly. So, you know, are there things like that we can provide cover for? So we're going to try and work in the background to see what additional cover we can get to give customers peace of mind. But I think that the insurers themselves, you know, we're an intermediary, a distributor. The insurers themselves will be nervous of the enormous risk to them of and the so difficult to say, well, how much do we have to charge for that? Because how do you work out how many people are going to claim on it? And, you know, it's one of those very difficult situations to cover. So it may be a little while before we get some better cover levels in to cover such things in the future. But certainly we're planning to get, you know, our standard travel insurance product set back up and on sale. And really hoping, along with probably everyone else who's listening in, that customers will want to come into the shops and onto our websites and, you know, phone us and start buying travel trips, because, you know, it's not particularly, you know, it's not a good situation at the moment. There's no money coming in and there's money going out for everyone. So, you know, we want to get that travel situation back, and we want to be there to support our travel agents with an insurance policy for them as soon as is possible. But I certainly think that, you know, we're not going to be allowed to fly internationally for a little while still yet. You know, so we're sort of thinking 1st of July is probably the earliest we're going to need that policy on sale. But, you know, if the signs that it's going to re-emerge sooner, we'll jump on it.
Great. Oh, well, fingers crossed. Thank you very much for joining me, panelists, and talking that through. I think it was really interesting to focus on insurance today, also taking some other questions. So thank you to you, and thank you also to everybody that joined us on Facebook Live. I hope you found that interesting. If you've got any further questions for these experts or anybody else on our expert panel, then you can send us an email or post them in the forum on our website, and we will endeavour to get some answers for you from our experts. So thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks, panelists, and catch you all again soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.